hichbadati et libo. These words usually translate to, I hardened Pharaoh's heart. They're the words used to convey God's behind-the-scenes work in the story of the Exodus, work that ensures that Pharaoh will keep saying no to Moses' demands, necessitating a greater and greater demonstration of God's power and more plagues upon Egypt. The root of the Hebrew word that's used here for hardened is kaved, heavy, substantial. God is, in a way, almost enlarging, intensifying Pharaoh's heart in order that Pharaoh will act a certain way. If we were to ditch our biases for a moment, because of course we're all rooting for the Israelites to get out of Egypt in this story, we might argue that God's behavior in the story is fairly unsavory on first read. Pharaoh, and by it's entrapment, exactly. Pharaoh, and by extension, the Egyptian people are tortured intentionally, all to make the freedom of the Israelites more glorious, more impressive. Why all the antics? We people with a conscience are moved to ask, why all the plagues? Why doesn't God soften, shrink, weaken Pharaoh's heart to make it easier for the Israelites to just slip out? This is a question that most of our sages approached and encountered, and I'll share with you my favorite interpretation in a moment, but I was reminded of this challenge this past week when I was privileged to see the movie Selma. It was riveting, and despite the controversy surrounding the portrayal of certain individuals and groups, I felt that it was an extraordinarily important movie to see, especially for those who did not live during those times. It illustrated the tortured goodness of Dr. King and almost unimaginable courage of those who stood and marched with him. There is a scene in Selma, and I don't need to offer you a spoiler alert, it's not giving anything away, but there's a scene when Dr. King says that his movement's tactics were to negotiate, demonstrate, and resist. Dr. King, who was, in addition to being a prophet, in a way, he was also a gifted strategist, understood that the civil rights movement needed to lay bare the true nature of the enemy, to expose the secret heart of those with whom it was confronted. So he chose, at times, he and his team, the worst places in which to negotiate, demonstrate, and resist, knowing that those were the places where hearts needed to be exposed. The suffering that the courageous individuals who marched in Selma and elsewhere endured was for the sake of a story being watched and witnessed by millions, in hopes that the goodness residing in the hearts of some of those millions would be latent no longer. It was an act of unmasking for everyone. And the unmasking went the other way as well. The truest depths of the evil and bigotry that lay in the hearts of some had to be exposed as well. The hearts of those who harbored hate had to be hardened in order to be completely visible to the world. Sforno, a great rabbinic commentator who I like to quote, offered the following interpretation of the issue of the plagues and the intentional hardening of Pharaoh's heart that feels so unfair. He writes that the hardening of Pharaoh's heart and the subsequent plagues were for the sake of unlocking the goodness in the rest of the Egyptians, who had, up to that point, been silent bystanders to the hate and evil in their midst. The warning of a coming plague, Pharaoh's resistance, and the suffering, and then the refusal to yield, all of this was engineered not to increase suffering, but to awaken the love inside the other Egyptians. God knew, writes this particular commentator, that Pharaoh himself was beyond reach, as was the sheriff of Selma and the police officers who followed him. But perhaps if others see the truth of Pharaoh's heart, if it is enlarged enough to be visible, then they will find themselves capable of change, capable of standing up, capable of looking inside their own hearts for what is truly good and right. They will see slavery for what it is, this commentator writes, and rise up against those who would hold on to it forever. This act of unmasking the perpetrator's secret heart, of enlarging or hardening it in order to reveal it, is a tactic that dates back to our Torah, to the book of Exodus, and it was the substance of much of the civil rights movement as well. The Exodus narrative and commentary thereof is all an effort to reveal the secret heart of the moment. Whether Dr. King and other civil rights leaders' actions in Selma or those of Moses and Aaron in our Torah portion this week, the whispering hope in these moments is that there will come a spark of revelation so that good people can see the true evil in their midst and reject it out loud, so that good people can see the true love in their own hearts and live by it and find courage to express it boldly. Both of these stories and the current events in our city and our country call us for an answer. They beseech us to look for the signs and experiences that present themselves, moments when true feelings are revealed, when they bubble up within us and they cannot be contained, in order that we may reveal our own secret hearts. And when we do, when we open ourselves up to what is right, even when what is right is hard, we become heirs to our own story. And as the Torah teaches us time and again, being heirs to this story, being heirs to the story of the Exodus, means to become a guardian for all oppressed people. The words of the Passover song came to my mind as I thought of this idea. The end of that song, "Be with all who in thrall to their tasks are driven. In thy power, speed the hour when their chains are riven. Earth around will resound, gleeful hymns to heaven." Being heirs to the story of the Exodus means to link arms and stand together in the face of the enemy, open-hearted. May God give each of us the strength to do this and the courage to look into the depths of our own secret hearts. Shabbat shalom.